It's Hollie's Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero at the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us. Special guests every time here to discuss. Bring your passion, come along for the ride, and don't forget to subscribe, cause...
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where once again on tonight's show we've got to talk about obviously another defeat and crashing out of another cup. But with me to do so tonight, I am joined by two amazing guests. First of all, Brian from Tottenham Tour. How are you, my friend?
I am, Hollie. Joe, I'm so happy to be back on your channel and spend some time with you, and obviously my good friend Josh. And I have to say, just watching that video, which I love, every time I see it, I love it. But in that video, we see a Romero crunching tackle. I forgot what one of those looked like, and Heung-min and Son scoring a goal. And guess what? I forgot what one of those looked like. But it's always good to come and spend some time with you, Hollie, and obviously Josh.
No, thank you for coming on, Ryan. I feel like there's going to be a lot to dissect tonight, and I'm glad I'm with you two to do so. So obviously as well, Josh, it's great to have you here. How are you?
Yeah, doing okay. It's mixed emotions. Happy about the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, but of course, Tottenham is Tottenham. But yeah, I was just thinking about this. It's actually been ages since I was last on the channel. So I'm really, really happy to be back. And it's nice, a bit of change of scenery. And it's good to see Brian back as well. We're missing you. We should come back from Canada soon.
April, I am back.
Well, good. At a leave-out protest, no doubt.
I'll be at a training ground near Enfield.
But do you know what? This is therapy. This is what we all need after more of the same. I mean, it's like a double whammy, isn't it? Because it was two knockout defeats, two cup defeats in just a matter of days. So yeah, hopefully we'll all be feeling better, and all the viewers will be feeling better after this.
Definitely, 100%. It is 100% needed, I feel. And like I say, welcome to everybody that's tuning in now that's going to rewatch this. Obviously, just to let you all know that this show is sponsored by the Tabletop. So if you're like me, get back into your Pokemon, go check them out for all things cards and board games. But anyway, let's kind of move on because I want to delve into this. So, Brian, obviously we've crashed out of the cup once again. And like Josh alluded to, obviously that's two cup knockouts in a couple of days. So how are you kind of feeling with it all, to be honest with you?
Do you know what, Hollie? I look at this now, and for me, the cups was all this season was about anyway. And obviously, the way our form was gone, it was like, don't worry, and just got the cups. It's just so heartbreaking to see this being our football club. It's literally heartbreaking to see what is happening. The worst thing is with Liverpool, you could see it coming, and Aston Villa. Obviously, Josh was at the game. You and I watched it at a pub, home, wherever it may have been. And as soon as we were on the attack, you could see Aston Villa, midfield in front of the defence, being resolute, tough to break down. But as soon as Aston Villa got the ball, every single one of us knew where that ball was going. There's just acres and acres and acres of space. And I just don't recognise Tottenham Hotspur anymore, unfortunately. And the incredible fan base they've travelled up to Anfield and got back. They travelled up to Villa Park and got back. To see this, it's just I could never. And we've known each other a few years now, Hollie, through doing this. And obviously, my stance in a certain area has been very, very outspoken and stays the same. But if you had told the me that met you then that February the 10th, 2025, this is where we'd be. Not even I would believe it. I'd be like, there's no way it could get this bad. But just when you think Tottenham Hotspur can't outdo it, and the worst thing, you look at it today, Hollie, it's been radio silence about the football team. But we've announced Beyonce is staying for an extra 2 nights, and Kendrick Lamar and some other rapper, I don't even know who he is, showing my age now. But they are going to be performing in the summer. So business literally as normal at Tottenham.
Yeah, and I think that's the most annoying thing. And I know that we'll get on to that certain subject a little bit later on in the show for sure. But it just kind of goes back. I know, Josh, we were speaking off camera about obviously the fact that you travelled up to Villa. And for you, obviously, being one of those fans and being as vocal as ever in that away stand, I don't know how the away fans like yourself as well, when you do go, just have the ability to be able to go there, still be vocal and support the team, but you're watching that drops.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's been most notable, and yeah, I mean, it didn't help that there were train strikes, and you know, I think anyone that drove up definitely picked the more sensible route. But the thing that's noticeable is, even when things get bad with Spurs, I think we can all relate to this. There's always a part of us that thinks, yeah, but it's a cup and it's Tottenham, and you sort of back yourself a little bit, and we think, you know what? Even as bad as we've been playing, I still give us a chance to, you know, pull off a good performance, because much of this season has been that, you know, the odd performance out of nowhere that's been really, really good, out of, you know, a run of bad games. But now the truth is, everyone I know that's turning up there, realistically, even if they didn't want to admit it, is thinking, well, how many are we going to lose by today? And that is where we're at as a football club. It's got to the point where the excitement that I had, and I'll be honest, the first 10 games under Postecoglou, it felt like being a little kid again. I think I was on this channel saying the same thing. It was like being a little kid again, where I was struggling to sleep the night before because I was so excited for a game. And now this is probably the worst I've felt about the club, worse than the Conte days, worse than the Nuno days, worse than the Mourinho days, worse than, you know, this is as bad as it gets, and it could get worse still. And that's the one thing that I've never felt as a Spurs fan, that I turn up to a game and I think, how many are we losing by today? No matter who we're playing, whether we're playing Real Madrid in the Champions League or we're playing Marine in the FA Cup, you know, it's always felt like, you know what, I still back us to get a result. And now I genuinely don't know where our next win comes from. I was at Brentford a week ago, and I was really surprised that we got a result. And then you're thinking after that, what grit and determination and backs against the walls and discipline defensively, and then the sort of sucker punch at the end with the great ball from Sonny to Sarr. And you're thinking, okay, that's a great way to go into this week of two really important cup games. And then you go and the players come out on the pitch. And even when they come out for the warm-ups, they don't look fired up. When they walk out of the tunnel and the fire is like blaring up and the music's loud and the lights are going and the crowd roars, it's, again, they don't look up for it. And then the whistle goes and it's very clear to see that the fears that they don't look up for it are true. And I think ultimately what the last two games in particular has shown is, I don't believe for one second that there is a player at that club that is playing for the manager anymore. You know, this is not about Ange in or out or Levy in or out. Fundamentally, we are at a point where players do not look like they are playing for the manager, because if your manager cannot motivate you for a semi-final second leg at the Cathedral of Football with the chance to play Newcastle of all teams at Wembley and end that trophy drought after all these years, knowing how much it means to the fans, knowing how much it means to the players to be the one that ends that sort of curse, and that is the performance we get at Liverpool, and then to follow that up with a performance like that against Aston Villa, yeah, I think to be honest, it's getting to the point where I think the club needs to start refunding fans that make the journey. Genuinely believe that, because the one constant throughout all of this has been the fans. I'm biased, of course. I'm a Spurs fan. I'm going to say it. But genuinely, I do believe that we have some of the best away fans in the country, if not in Europe, in terms of the numbers that we would bring, given the opportunity. Even games like Tamworth, the amount of fans that were trying to scramble to get tickets. I didn't have a ticket for Brentford. I ended up going to the pub and spent 3 hours trying to get to a ticket, eventually managed to get one. In the home end, albeit, but I took whatever I could get because I just wanted to see the team. The fans were so loud yesterday. They were so good. I think it's fair to say people that I've spoken to, at least that watched it on the telly, said that you could definitely hear the Spurs fans more than the Villa fans, which says a lot considering how good a position Villa are in compared to Spurs. And yeah, that's what we're met with. We're met with players that look dead on their feet, completely emotionally drained. Half the players look like they don't want to be at the football club anymore. Half the players look like they need to be on a beach somewhere, just resting and decompressing. And, I would probably have a more sympathetic view of everything if it was the case that we were playing super well before all the injuries. But the truth is, even when we had our fully fit squad, the results haven't been good, probably since the Chelsea defeat last season. And it just, every time you think it can't get worse for Spurs, they outdo it themselves, and it seems to happen. So we're in a position now where it feels like you don't know whether to blame the players, whether to blame the ownership, whether to blame the manager. You kind of want to blame all three at times, and yeah, I mean, something desperately has to change.
No, definitely, and I think you summed it up brilliantly, Josh. I think it's just at the moment it's just an absolute mess. But again, going back to the game, obviously to concede within a minute and then to see the midfield, Brian, just again, like Josh said, just be non-existent throughout. And it's been like that for a couple of weeks now.
It has, Hollie. They just have no idea what they're doing. And the worst thing is we played with Liverpool and with Villa with pretty much a lack of creativity. Yet we asked them to try and be creative and push up. We're asking Porro, who, yes, he is in bad form, but he's exhausted. If there is a player, he's played the most outfield minutes in the Premier League. And he's had the option of Spence all along. And he hasn't chosen him, or maybe put Archie Gray there. He could have easily rotated and he hasn't. But you knew, Hollie, I'm sure you were like me, as soon as they got the ball for the build-up to that goal, and you saw that the left wing, you're like, here it is. And Joe Kinski was brilliant apart from that moment. But that's what you need a goalkeeper to be ready for, that moment. And literally, it was... I relate that back to when we saw Leicester Everton a couple of weeks ago. And it was like, oh my God, if Everton win this, we're 16th. Please come on, Leicester. And then they scored within 10 seconds. Well, when you saw that, you're just like, do you know what? You actually can't make this up. You actually cannot make this up anymore. That it was just so open, so obvious. And you could see how many times in the first half as well, Hollie, were they just a man over? Or it just kept happening over and over again. And it's because there's no change with this game plan, is there? It's maybe different personnel. You may try and tweak a little thing, but it's still do the same thing. And they can't do it. They can't do it.
I think that's the biggest thing, because for me, I've probably been, I'd say, Ange's injuries, it's this. But then I was thinking to myself, if we go out, again, like you've both kind of said, if you can't get your players ready for a semi-final on obviously on that Thursday, and then another position to potentially go on into the FA Cup, I can't do it anymore. And I think, Brian, just coming back to you, obviously this narrative of injuries, etc., and I totally get it. The team is depleted to the max, I would say. But again, you've got to be able to change things, because it's clearly not working, this style of football that we're trying to do.
Do you know what it is, Hollie? You wouldn't believe this, but I went nuts on We Are Tottenham TV yesterday. You never would have thought it, that I went absolutely mental. But with this injury thing, you look at it, we're all talking about the players that are injured at our team. Manor Solomon, who was injured and needed 4 operations whilst at Tottenham, is at Leeds every single game. No injury. Divine, Vuskovic, Phillips, you name them all, they're all playing football regular, maybe not be as high a league or higher standard, but they're playing week in, week out, no injuries. And then did you see the tweet yesterday about Japhet Tanganga?
No. What was it?
So Japhet Tanganga, who was obviously an injury problem at Spurs, couldn't get form, injured all the time. Since he's left Tottenham, he has played 48 back-to-back consecutive games without an injury, at Millwall and is up for being one of their best players of the season. He has not conceded more than 2 goals since that 4-1 defeat to Leicester. And then you look at Dominic Solanke, who didn't get injured ever, comes to Tottenham. It's madness. It's these injuries, and the worst thing about it as well, Hollie, is this club are going to be made to look even more foolish than they are. I don't know why the club just don't let Ange come out and say, listen, Van der Ven has an injury. Van der Ven is injured. He's going to be out for X, Y, Z time, because playing him against Elfsborg and then saying we're managing his minutes, and then he's disappeared. And Ben White at the Filth, who's just had knee surgery, is now in training, ready to come back. But Cuti Romero is a slow healer. Whereas these injuries, wherever they may be, but the club are being made to look even more stupid or stupider, whatever. Let's make words up here. As Spurs make injuries up and rehabilitation times back. I've never heard such a slow healer. I mean, a few weeks ago, James Maddison was sore. Have any of you ever phoned up work and said, yeah, listen, I work on the telephone. I can't pick up the telephone. My arm's a bit sore. You just can't make it up. You just cannot make this stuff up.
No, and I think that's the thing. I don't even know what to think anymore, Josh. Obviously, these injuries, like Brian said, it's just a madness how many there's been. And again, how long it's taken for players to come back. Is that a problem with our medical team? Is that, again, the problem with the way that Ange is playing this football? I just don't know what to put a finger on it, to be honest with you.
Well, you only have to look at LinkedIn and the club vacancies to see how many medical positions they're looking to fill in. I believe Jeff Scott, the club doctor, recently left the club as well. So I don't believe that it's just bad luck. And that's the way that Ange portrays it in the media, that it's just bad luck. I'm sorry, take some accountability. And actually, do you know what? Fundamentally, you would expect more injuries when you've even got players like Eric Dyer, who came out and said Ange only does match-related stuff in training. He said literally that's all they do is match stuff. So if you're playing at match intensity all the time in training, what do you think is going to happen when players are going in the way that they do and we're playing the number of games that we're playing? It just, it gets to a point where I'm sure that all they've been able to do is some recovery. But let's not like get this messed up, really. We had a fit squad at the start of the season. We got injuries because of the training methods and because of the intensity that Ange demands from these players. And because we didn't have the squad depth to be able to truly rotate. Otherwise, you see what happens, like Fulham last season in the Carabao Cup. So its hands are tied in that regard. But the combination of the two, when you get the injuries, and of course, then some are caused by impact in matches. Not every injury is going to be caused by Ange. I'm not saying that at all. But when you then get a threadbare squad even more because of the number of injuries, and every player is required to play every game, every 3 days, of course they're going to look dead on their feet. And of course they're going to be playing in that sort of red zone where they are at increased risk of injury again. But the thing that really is disturbing is the fact that it's not the injuries in the first place, right? If a player gets injured that hasn't been injured yet, if Porro's to pull up with a hamstring, having played every minute of every game pretty much, are we seriously going to think, oh, that's Ange Postecoglou? I don't think we are. I think most of us will be sensible enough to realise that this is because of how hard he's working and how many games he's playing. But the thing that is inexcusable is the players that are already injured come back and they're injured within a day or two of returning, whether it be 10 minutes, 45 minutes, a day, a week, they're gone again. That is not happening to other clubs. So there is something fundamentally wrong with whatever is going on, whether it be the coaching, the medical staff, whatever. I tend to not want to blame the medical staff because, funnily enough, Spurs have the access to the best facilities, the best doctors, the best equipment, the best sports scientists, the best nutritionists, every single thing that you need to maximize your recovery chances and to give you the best opportunity of staying fit. We've got it. We've got technology that other Premier League clubs may not even have. And yet we're still getting injuries. So that is why I think it's a lazy argument, the people that always blame the medical staff. It's really lazy. There's something deeper going on there, and you only have to look at what Ange did at Celtic. He had plenty of injuries there. Of course, it doesn't look as bad because when you're Celtic playing in that league, you could probably play your under-18s and still win most of your matches. So, yeah, it's there's something fundamentally not right with how they're being worked and how, because the stats speak for itself. You look at the players that are on loan, you look at the players that aren't playing at Spurs, suddenly it's like a magic wand has been waved over them. They're absolutely fine. Japhet Tanganga was literally a walking injury. You're thinking, when you're looking at Tanganga, right? When Tanganga first played, and I remember distinctly that Liverpool game where we lost 1-0, but he was man of the match. I thought, gee, we've got the new Ledley King here. That is how good he was. That was the potential that he had. And then he seemed to get injured every single few months, and he was out with this, out with the next. And then look what happens when he leaves. I would not be surprised one bit if Japhet Tanganga is playing Premier League football next season because he's been that good. Jamie Donnelly's not injured at Leyton Orient either. None of the players that are out on loan are. So yeah, there's something not quite right with that. I think it's lazy to say it's the medical staff.
No, definitely. It's got to be, like you say, I know we joke and say there's loads of jobs in the medicals team at the moment, but like you say, it's got to be the way that we are playing. And then, Brian, it kind of goes back to this whole kind of thing of if we do decide, obviously, to get rid of Ange, I don't know whether them upstairs will at this point in time, but where do we kind of go from there? It's kind of like a crossroads, I guess. What's next for Spurs?
Joe, I've got to the point where, let's face it, at some point, whether it be during this season or the summer, I think we can pretty much safely assume that there will be, unless he goes to win the Europa League, which I don't think he will, and not just because of him, because of the squad, I think we will be bringing in a new manager. And the guy I wanted before Postecoglou was even mentioned was Thomas Frank. I love him. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I think he adapts. I think he changes. Whenever I see interviews of him behind the scenes, I think he's amazing. But I've got to the point now that anyone that I do want, I don't want him to come because we're ruining him. Mm-hmm. There's people saying if he was to go now, do we go try and get a Scotty Parker or a Carrick from Borough because of the Spurs connection? Well, they have all managers want to go back to their old teams and try and have a go at the hot seat. Are they ready for it? Is it just another paper over the crack? We've tried everything, haven't we, Hollie? We've tried the young manager, the old manager, the win now manager, the project manager, the forward-thinking football manager, the pragmatic manager. I honestly don't know where this club goes. But I know one thing, it will be exactly the opposite to Ange because we start building something and then when it doesn't work, rather than thinking, right, we've got this group of players that we think can do something, let's give it to a manager like Slot and Klopp. Same kind of football ideas. Might not like all of his players that he's inherited, but he can use them all. He can fight until he can refresh. Whereas at Tottenham, we do the opposite. But if I had a magic wand and we were to hire a new manager, I would want Thomas Frank. I'm sticking to my guns with that one. I just think, I think he's a joy to watch. I think he's a joy to listen to. And you got to remember, keeping Brentford up is no mean feat. So yeah, I would say Thomas Frank, Hollie. That would be my number one pick.
Because I know how this is going to go. If we keep Ange or decide to get rid of him in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Ryan Mason probably at the helm, Josh, till the end of the season. And then, like Ryan says, hopefully get someone in the summer. How do you kind of feel about it? Are the club going to get rid of him? Are they going to keep him? What is the plan?
This is the first time where I feel like it feels like Daniel Levy is actually trying to keep hold of the manager, which is crazy because normally when the pressure's on him, he deflects and it's the manager that goes, and then the fans are spineless and we don't carry on calling for Levy's head. And as a result, we have the next 18 months where we give the new guy a chance. And I think the way that it's perfectly summed up is in this sentence, right? Support the team, not the regime. That's how I feel. That's how fans that go away feel, clearly. But it feels like he's just clinging on to him. And do we really think that Ange Postecoglou is the guy that's going to win us the Europa League? I don't think so, right? And I predicted us to win the Europa League at the start of the season. I thought with no drop downs, this is a great opportunity. The exit of the 2 cups this week has kind of solidified that now. I think that's an unrealistic expectation. Fundamentally, I don't want Mason, right? I don't want Mason, but I do not think it could necessarily be much worse than what we've already got. If anything, it will just be a continuation of the same, right? I don't think it's going to be any worse than what we've seen. But, and this is the debate, do we get rid of Ange now and hope that we can find someone that, comes in and this is the thing, right? This is what we're weighing up. We're weighing up either a continuation and things get worse than they currently are as it stays under Ange, or we have Mason and it's the same. Or the third option is we thankfully are able to find someone else and we get a new manager bounce and that carries us through to the end of the season and we just about improve from where we're at and, may squeeze a top half finish. And the other thing, another point about Mason, people used to say about Mason, he plays his mates, but most of his mates are gone now, so he doesn't have a choice. And there is a question to say, well, I think fans have made their minds up on Ryan Mason, but he's been coaching for a long time. And is there a means to say, give him a chance until the end of the season? I personally am not convinced. I don't think many are. But then you look at why did he reject the Anderlecht job when he was given a job to manage in a first division team, a club that historically pride themselves on being in Europe, and he turned it down. So it does make you think. But I think also if we do get rid of Ange, beggars can't be choosers at the same time. And I feel that this fan base will have to accept that if we got a more pragmatic manager in, that we're not in any position to be entitled over style of play. I'm sorry, we're not. We really are not. We've got no more right to win trophies than Aston Villa or Newcastle or these other teams. We really don't, right? We have as much right as they do, because if we're going to go back and talk about history, it's been a bloody long time since we won a trophy, and it's been a bloody long time since we won a really significant trophy as well. Aston Villa have won the European Cup. Spurs haven't done that. Nottingham Forest have won the European Cup twice. Spurs haven't done that, the equivalent of the Champions League. So what gives us more right? And it's recent expectations that were set, in my view, under Pochettino. And it was promise after promise from the board that the training ground, the stadium, would be a game changer, and that would result in things changing on the pitch. It feels almost like every year on year since the new stadium opened, it's got worse. Bar that one, we had one great sort of season under Conte. We got Champions League football, but even then it kind of worse and worse and worse. And we've had the exact opposite effect. It was like a classic politician. It was promising the world and delivering absolutely nothing. So I think that's where you can put your blame fundamentally for everything. But we're not in a position now where we can pick and choose, because who actually wants to come to Spurs now? And the only thing we can hope for is that a manager has enough confidence within themselves and maybe a bit of arrogance to say, do you know what? I back my ability enough to be the one that ends this cycle, ends this curse. And so we may well be lucky. But say it's an Allegri, right, who's been pictured at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in recent weeks, who plays a very pragmatic game. Can we really complain? What do we want as fans? Do we want entertaining football and win absolutely nothing? Do we want pragmatic football but winning football? Or, and probably my preference is, can we find a manager who will, you know, alternate the tactics depending on the opposition that you face, which seems the logical way to manage, right? You'd think you would set a team out to play with fundamentals, but then tactically you would switch things up. That could be a Marco Silva. The point to an example at Chelsea for Fulham, he switched from a back four to a back three with wing backs, and they played Chelsea off the park. Or Brian's man, Thomas Frank, who I think is a master at changing his tactics and knowing when to go direct, when to play more expansive, when to play counter-attacking. I think maybe that's probably the only thing we've not ticked off our list, isn't it? We've not really had that tactician, that real pragmatic. And I don't mean pragmatic as in defensive. I mean pragmatic as in sensible manager who is a tactician, a tinker man over anything else. So we've got to be careful what we wish for. But at the same time, I don't think if Ange does go, I think he sacked himself, frankly, because the results have not been good enough for a very long time, not just with the injuries.
And it's weird as well, because like we've all kind of said, if this was anybody else, they would have been gone out the door, because this is the worst kind of point we've got to. But Brian, is it the case that obviously Daniel Levy's like, oh, I can't sack another manager sort of thing because the fans would be an uproar? Like, is that the only reason he's kept him, do you think? I know that obviously the man, the egg, the myth, Daniel Levy of what he is a funny old bugger. But what do you kind of make of it, and why is he still in this job if this is the case?
I think it's solely if obviously you can see right now there's been frustrations about Ange Postecoglou for a little while now, and I to a point had refused to switch, and I've never ever wanted a manager out before, ever. But after the North London derby, with just the lack of effort, it's like a North London derby. These players shouldn't need any. If there's one game, these players should be raring to go and put. And I was like, I just can't do it anymore, because someone let me know then that Ipswich had lost less games than us. And I was like, you what? And then when you realise their first win was us, so they hadn't had a win till November. Now they've got. Anyway, so it's got to the point now. I think we all said with Ange Postecoglou when he came in, there's a lot of people that said, oh, this is the final chance, last chance saloon, this is this. And it's another one that's not worked. Why it's not worked? We've talked injuries, we've talked tactics, talked quality of player. We know we've needed a left back, we don't do it. We know we needed a powerful midfielder, we don't buy one. Apparently Ange doesn't use them. You talk about how Levy is. You look at it. Back in the Poch days, he said, don't call me manager, call me coach, because I don't get to make decisions when it came to... Now we have a manager that doesn't coach, but he gets all the money. This is what this football club... Honestly, if you explain this to like an alien that just come down on Earth, they're probably going to go back up to space or whatever it be. It's literally, you cannot... This stuff up. Like Ange Postecoglou when he said, it's brilliant that Dane Scarlett's available for Villa. He's cup-tied. He played against Oxford. You can't make these things up apart from when you're at Tottenham Hotspur. I solely think the only reason he has still got the job is he knows that if he does this, yet again, it's another failed appointment where whatever way you want to look at it, he's had his fingers and toes all over in all the dirty pies. And you got to remember his famous programme notes after the Villa game during COVID, where he goes, Tottenham have lost our way and we're going to play the exciting Tottenham brand. And then he appointed 3 defensive managers before we got to this one. And all I will say with this now, it's with the way that we were losing against Villa and the way we needed to go against
Can I just add on to that? One thing that is two little points. One is when we're comparing managers, it's a sad state of affairs that all we can have to compare is who can do the best out of a terrible situation that Daniel Levy and the board put them under in the first place. Yeah. And the reason for me why I don't think Ange is doing good enough is because other managers have had their hands tied by Levy and done significantly better. The one thing I will defend Ange on is the fact that, for me, this is the season that the board has deserved for a very long time. But for the last however many years, last decade, we had Harry Kane to bail us out, and we had Sonny to bail us out. And now, even though I think for the last probably 2-3 seasons, Son has started to tail off a little bit, this season's been the most notable drop-off. Sonny is nowhere near his old levels. And I think people need to accept that he is just getting older and he has lost a yard of pace. And it's not necessarily his fault. It's not for lack of trying. But because he was the only superstar, he's been made captain. He's been given all this responsibility. And I do feel for Sonny a little bit because as much as I've not been impressed with his performances one bit, his confidence is shot. He looks out on his feet and he's just not able, for whatever reason, to perform at the level he used to be able to. And when you look at those two, now that you're two players that were always bailing us out under different managers, under Levy and the board, we don't have that comfort blanket anymore. We don't have that clutch player. We don't have it anymore. It doesn't exist, which is why, as a manager, you have to kind of accept that that is the case. And I think that that's my slight issue, is I think that people are not being entirely honest about Sonny. And this is not to hate Sonny. This is not a being appreciative of how much of a legend he is for the club and everything he's given for the club and what a nice guy he is as well. But it's just life and it's just football. There always comes a point where players tail off in their career. And, you know, the comparison is players like Salah and players like, you know, of that kind of category of player, because that's where Sonny was. He was in that really, really high kind of level, that elite group at the top of the Premier League. And Salah's older than Son and producing like never before. And Sonny, it's just not worked out that way. And he's dead on his feet. I mean, we all know the responsibilities he has for South Korea. He plays pretty much every minute against any opposition, flying all the way around the world. But there has to be acceptance that we can't rely on him in the way we used to. And that's where the manager a good manager for me, or a top manager, would separate himself from the rest, because he would say, okay, clearly this is not working. Therefore, we need to prioritize getting a player in that position to take the weight off, because clearly Timo Werner's not good enough and Odebear's injured, and we need to be able to find a way to play where we're not relying on that one player to provide a magic moment to save us. I think that's papering over the cracks. And for me, the obvious one is Manor Solomon. Look how well he's playing for Leeds. Are people really going to tell me that he's going to be worse than Timo Werner, or worse than the level that Son's playing at right now? I just don't believe it, because yes, he got injured, but before he got injured, in that first 10 games of the season, he started the season really, really brightly for us, and he's been playing ever so well for Leeds. And take the politics out of it, right? This is a footballer contracted to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. We've got to be selfish in that situation. And that's where I'm a bit surprised that we didn't bring in that sort of player. And I know, of course, we brought in Tell, but we all know that Tell's being made to fill in, just like he was made to fill in at Bayern Munich, which is probably why it wasn't working for him, because they brought in Harry Kane and they have a real wealth of brilliant attacking options at Bayern. So he got kind of shifted out wide and kind of playing a bit part on the bench. But just because of that, Bayern Munich, you can do that. At Spurs, to me, it seems weird that we're not playing him as a striker. And I'm seeing Sonny playing up top yesterday. We have to learn to live with where we're at. And that, for me, is where I have big question marks over Ange. And I sympathise with him, and I'll defend him, because it's not easy being that first manager, really, with to be the first Spurs manager that no longer can rely on those two superstar players that were basically such a huge reason for why we were where we were under previous managers. But it's your job to find a way around that. And it doesn't feel like there has been. And the attitude is, and the kind of the way he's approached it in the media, particularly, has been, for me, not quite right.
No, definitely. And I think that's the thing. It's just very, like I say, difficult in terms of with Sonny, because like we say, he is a legend for the club, what he's done for the club, but we're just not managing him properly. And like you say, I don't know whether that's because Ange doesn't know how to. I'm fed up of seeing him through the middle. He needs to stay out wide. And again, when we brought in Tell, like you said, Josh, play Tell through the middle. Like, he can do that. And again, obviously, he did manage to score, which is probably the only positive from that Villa game.
He was in the middle. When he was in the middle of the box.
Mm-hmm. So it's there on paper, and it worked. Again, it was a brilliant ball from Decky, but I always say on this show there's so much praise for Decky at the minute, because I think he is one of the shining kind of lights. But before we kind of wrap up, obviously, Brian, we have got United at the weekend, and obviously there is a massive kind of change for Tottenham happening. So I want you to let everybody know what is going on if they don't know already. I know someone's put in the chat as well that there's a stream on tonight about the change for Tottenham too. But Brian, I'll let you crack on with that one.
Look, what's happening is, obviously, people know me for what protests I've tried to arrange, attend, lead with the group that I'm with a few years ago. It's actually where I met Josh in person for the first time. We've tried many things, but obviously change for Tottenham have been about for a while. Tried to do something then, but obviously with the growing unrest that we have now, they have stepped up and they are getting a lot of support from the fans, media, a lot of people. And after the brilliant performance from the Leicester one, where they went very, very quiet and everyone was like, what's going on here? And then, surprise, there's big plans for the Manchester United game. It's starting off with a walk or a march, shall we say, from the intersection of Lordship Lane and Tottenham High Road. They are marching down to the ground to where the media or the main entrance is in the West Stand. That's going on. Then obviously they've got plans for during the game. And then after the game, there's a planned sit-in in the South Stand. So whether your season ticket is in the South Stand, or the one beauty of the one thing Daniel's delivered, that stadium, is it isn't like the old days where you can only stay in the East Stand or the West Stand. You can walk right around that bad boy, apart from the away section. So there's going to be a sit-in in the South End. South End? Don't go to South End. Don't go to South End. I'd rather say the South Stand. The South Stand would be best. But look, the boys and women at Change for Spurs and Jay have put a lot of effort into this. And for once, like we were saying behind the scenes, this is finally getting traction. This is finally, and it's not just about, I think people are starting to come around to, obviously, I've been Levy out for 17 years, but there's been people now that have started to see, since we moved to the game-changing stadium, that we've been given false promises. Lies have been told and called out. Nothing's getting better apart from the off the field. The fans, or should I say clients, are being taken for fools. And finally, I think people are ready to take action because he is the highest paid chairman. We have the lowest wage to revenue turnover. We are, you hear from Simon Jordan, we're the best run club. For business wise, yeah, not for football. We are a football club. And there's a lot of people that have had Tottenham in their family from generation to generation. And even the people that I speak to that saw us get relegated said that this actual time is worse. There's that, and hopefully we can all get together and have this protest. So the march is starting at 3 p.m. As I said, on the intersection of the High Road and Lordship Lane. They're meeting at 3:15, but the march starts at 3. It's all about coming together. It's all about doing this the right way. And it's all about the bigger numbers, because the bigger numbers get the bigger attention, and the bigger attention puts Levy, Enoch, the sponsors and everything under more pressure. And together we are stronger. So let's just hope that people are able to attend this protest, because they are doing such fantastic work. If I was not in Toronto, I even looked at coming over, and then when I said to my wife, I might, if I can get a flight, I might go over. She goes, "You do realise that's Valentine's weekend?" And then, yeah, I don't fancy a divorce. I don't fancy a divorce. I like my life here. So this one might be too soon, but I'm back in April. I plan to do a lot of things as well. But everyone, if you do want change for Tottenham, whether it be Levy and Enoch out like myself and many others, whether it be Levy finally does step aside, like officially, and does not get involved with the football club side, whether it be you want Ange out, whether it be whatever, there is so much that needs changing for Spurs. A majority of us want the ownership out, gone, ta-da, but it could be many, many other things. So if you feel that you want change, now is the time to walk with us, stand with us, sit with us, chant with us, and let's hope, no matter where we all stand on this and the wars that go on in YouTube, Twitter, Spurs fan base, all we want together is a club to be proud of, a club to be successful, a club that rediscovers to dare is to do, a team where the game is about glory is an actual thing again. And let's just hope we can do that.
100%. And I think that's the thing as well, because I know obviously that I've seen that if you're an international fan and you can't attend the game, there are other ways that you can kind of get involved as well. And I think for the first time, obviously I went to the one that was the Super League one. And again, you could see there was some kind of unrest sort of thing. And now, like we've all kind of said tonight, the fact that even if it's just something small that you want changing, or like you say, you want the owners gone, etc., it is the time to kind of unite and come together. So yeah, fingers crossed it all goes to plan. I'm sure it will do at the weekend. But I thought it was just important to get it out there to anybody that's rewatching that hasn't come across it just as of yet. But Josh, obviously to wrap things up, I know we've spoken about Enoch out and this, that, and the other. But for you, are you on the same? Because I know we had a little chat before the show kind of started, and I had to try and tell you to stop so you could say it on camera. But for you, is it the same kind of stance for you? Want the owners gone? Just want change at the minute? Because I think Brian put it perfectly. Whether you want a big amount of change at this moment, I think we're all united as fans that we want something to change at this club.
This is going to sound crazy, Brian, but I've known you now for 5 years.
Is it that long?
5 years now.
Wow. It's been a wonderful 5 years knowing you, mate. If this is what brought us together, then so be it.
Well, but this is the very issue that did, and it's clear to see. And for me, it started fundamentally when Poch got failed by Daniel Levy. I think if there was any manager that deserved the time and the patience, it was that man. Yep. And since then, it has just been worse and worse and worse. And I believe that Levy held a meeting. There was a board meeting with fans, and he was asked directly, I'm pretty sure, about the Super League. And he said, no, Spurs will not be the next day. What happened? Spurs came out as one of the Super League teams.
Yep.
The bonuses, the season ticket prices, concert after concert, which is great, by the way, knowing that none of that is going back into the football club, because the only money that seems to be going into the football club these days is player sales and TV money. I mean, I think you know how I feel. I want Levy out. I want Levy gone. I want Enoch out. I think Enoch themselves want out. I think Joe Lewis and co are desperate to get out at this point in time. But there is one person that will chain himself to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, set himself on fire if he has to get that every last pound in for his own pocket whilst the football club suffers. That's Daniel Levy. And, you know, even there's an element of just read the bloody room, right? After what happened against Liverpool and Villa, what gets announced today? More concerts. Is that really what Tottenham fans want to see after that? After exiting 2 cups, when that's pretty much our only hope this season. Here is a person that has run a club absolutely brilliantly as a business. And there is a man that took us to a level that we probably never saw happening. That big, shiny stadium, which is incredible. It really is incredible. The training ground, which is also really incredible. The Poch years made us believe, but how much of that was down to Levy? I'm not sure it really was. It was down to the Gareth Bale money and then some very clever recruitment from Mitchell. And you look at the fees. I mean, they weren't particularly high for these players. And so I'm very grateful for Levy taking the club to this point. But he is now more than outstaying his welcome. He is more than stagnated. He's reached his limit. That's it.
Yep.
What's happened is he's hit the wall and he's come back the other side, and now the club is sliding the opposite way. And you know, brutally, if we want to be a big club, we have to act like a big club. And you look at who owns the big clubs, and you look at the money the big clubs spend and the way that they operate. You kind of you have to join them if you want to be one of them. It's just not going to happen. They can't expect to pull off a Leicester. So for me, and for me, it's the total disregard for the fans. It's all those fans that cannot afford to go to games anymore. The ones that used to go to White Hart Lane. In a cost of living crisis, the club making excuses for why they have to get rid of concessions. I mean, it's just outrageous. If anyone doesn't need to make cuts, it's Spurs. So for so many reasons, for every manager that has been failed, for every bad player that's been brought in, for every player that looked like they were joining, but Spurs moved the goalposts and then the deal collapsed, for every fan that goes home and away, for every fan that watches on the TV and around the world, I don't think that we deserve this. And I'm not saying we deserve to win trophies and that a new ownership necessarily guarantees trophies. We don't deserve a chairman and part owner of a football club that runs it with such disregard for the very people that have made his existence and his fortune in football possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
just right. Like that. 100%. both of you on it. I don't think I could have had the words to put it all together properly. So it's been great to have you both on here to kind of obviously go over that. I know we only went over it a little bit, the Villa game, but to be honest with you, there was bigger things more important to talk about than that. But yeah, it will be interesting, obviously, to see how the rest of the season goes along. I know Dan is still very optimistic. I wish I had your optimism, but I sadly don't at this point in time. I don't enjoy watching us at the moment. I don't enjoy. Well, I do enjoy these therapy sessions because they're nice to speak to friends and stuff, but it's just the same old Josh week in, week out that we seem to talk about. So hopefully, if you can make it to the protest, whether you want to march, whether you want to sit in your seat, whether you want to put on social media, if you aren't able to get to the game, do it if you really want change. Because I think this is the first time, especially that I've seen as well, that you both alluded to, that the fact that there is some traction with this. And I think this is going to work and actually make them listen for once. If they don't get out the door, okay, fine. But at least then it's some sort of thing in the PR and the media that they are horrific as leaders of this football club, because it's not a football club at the moment. But like I say, thank you both for joining me tonight. We'll go around the table, say our goodbyes and where we can find each other. So Brian, thank you again for coming on the show. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
First of all, Hollie, it's always nothing but a pleasure. When I got the message from you today to come on, I was delighted. Love you to bits on your channel, and it's a pleasure to have me or be back on. Find me at Tottenham on Tour, or pretty much anywhere that will talk Levy out. You'll find me popping up if you say his name 3 times. And yeah, Hollie, like I said, most importantly is people like and subscribe to your channel. And I look forward to be actually able to do some more stuff with both of you in the very near future.
100%. Like I say, thank you again, Brian. Really appreciate it. And Josh as well. It's been great to have you on. Where can everybody find you doing your thing as well?
Sorry for the negativity, but I just have to say it how I feel it is, whether you agree or disagree. Big up to everyone listening in. Please do like and subscribe. Pleasure to be back on the channel as always. Pleasure to see both of your brilliant faces again at Josh Hughes TV for occasional football tweets. I sort of tweet less than I do or used to, because I'm just so disillusioned with it all now. But yeah, I will definitely be there at the protest. I hope everyone in the comments or anyone that can is there. We need bigger numbers now more than ever. The very fact that we're having space, good to say spaces then. It's been a long time since I did Twitter spaces. Now that we're seeing YouTubers, TV, mainstream media, you name it, all talking about this issue, something's brewing. So pleasure to be on the channel. And as always, Levy out.
Damn right.
Oh yes. But yeah, like I say, thank you everybody that has watched tonight, that's going to rewatch. Like I say, there may be a show on Wednesday. I just need to double check I'm about, but I'm sure Wes and Nelson wouldn't mind doing a show. And then next Monday it'll be back again for Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where I really don't want to talk about another defeat, but I feel like it might be one when we play Man
Just to
United.
say with that, for me, you know, I'll probably get hate for this. I don't care. I've said it everywhere. I don't care about the result on the pitch Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we're going to do, we're not going to get Europe via the league. We're not going to get relegated. The result is what happens off the pitch Sunday, not what happens on the pitch. So, as much as we don't want to talk about defeat, if someone told me you get a loss against United, but the protest goes absolutely global and goes off absolutely brilliantly, I'll take that all day long. All day long.
Maybe we'll talk about that instead, I'm hoping. Because like tonight, we'll talk about the game for about 5 minutes and then move on to how we all feel at the moment. But yeah, make sure you get along to the protest if you can. And like I say, we'll be back again next week, same time, same place. So hope to see you all then. Until next time, come on you Spurs and Levy out.
Levy out.